and coil.
Hello, good evening. Welcome. This is Ghana Tonight. We're live from Yusabata Desawe Kanda, also live on TV3 Ghana on Facebook and also on 3FM 92.7. I am Alfred Ocansey. Tonight, the ambulance trial involving Dr. Kasiel Atoforcing, the current finance minister, has ended, but calls are growing for the Criminal Investigations Department of the Ghana Police Service to investigate the roles of some individuals linked to the case. We unpack the emerging issues tonight. Stay with us. Also, here on Ghana Tonight on the plate, the government has announced an increase in feeding grants for prisoners, raising the amount from 1 cedi 80 pesos to 5 cedis per prisoner. What exactly is the impact that this would have on the welfare of the prisoner? We'll speak to someone who works closely with inmates to find out the real issues tonight. Also, on the list tonight, the list of the New Patriotic Party National Chairmanship hopefuls continues to grow, with the former Energy Minister Boache Jacko being the latest to join. We assess the evolving internal dynamics as the party heads into the presidential primary early next year. We'll give you details of that here on Ghana Tonight. As always, you're an integral part of the conversation, and stay with us as we get into all of this. And the president has touched down. We'll show you the video shortly, but let's, as always, connect with us on Facebook and on YouTube, TV3 Ghana, and also on X. Let's get talking. Let's settle for Ghana Briefs.
The University Teachers Association of Ghana, UTAG, is discussing whether to declare another strike in solidarity with the prevailing illegal mining menace. Immediate past President Professor Mamudu Akudugu expressed the need for the leadership to sustain the pressure regarding the fight against illegal mining. He was speaking at the sideline of UTAG's 22nd biennial.
We embarked on strike last year, and we got a pact signed with the then flag bearers of the various political parties, and we call off the strike because of that. And recently we had to remind the president that he signed a pact with us, and in that pact there were a number of items that they were supposed to do, or a number of activities that they were supposed to do, and we reminded the president of that. And so Galamsey fight is unabated.
Scientists are raising red flags over the environmental toll of illegal mining in Ghana. They argue the country's water bodies and soil is under threat, leading to worsening food security. The warning came during the 8th Sustainable Phosphorus Summit, where global experts and stakeholders gathered to chart a path toward food security and develop a phosphorus action plan. Professor Kwame Frimpong is with the Department of Soil Science at the University of Cape Coast.
There are some potentially toxic metals, but also by the kind of things we do, which is the illegal gold mining activities, we expose these potentially toxic metals. And when they get mixed with water, for example, they move. We get our soil contaminated, we get our food contaminated, and we get our water contaminated.
Some aggrieved staff of the Ghana Railway Workers Company have threatened mayhem if their grievances are not addressed after the second round of engagement with the National Labour Commission. The railway workers suspended their planned strike over 12 months' salary arrears after the Labour Commission directed them to return to the negotiation table with the appropriate authorities. Benjamin Isuman is the General Secretary of the Railway Workers Union.
We have given up today up to 8, that is next week, Wednesday, for all the parties to sit down and have a conclusion on the payment plan, how they are going to pay the 12 months salary. And we will report back on the 9th, that's Thursday. They've urged the ministry to engage the union with the GRC and the GRDA so that we have a conclusion on the payment plan.
Education Minister Haruna Idrisu has urged a coalition of unpaid teachers who have been protesting for 13 months unpaid salaries to remain patient and await clearance from the Ministry of Finance. He acknowledged the legitimacy of the demands and assured them that he will work to ensure their salaries are paid.
The matter which requires urgent solution is 6,700 whose process started. Subsequent to Ministry of Finance issued clearance for your recruitment to the Ministry of Education. That process only lapsed in December 2024. You will receive deservingly even for the period that you are so complaining about. You'll be compensated for it.
Government has announced an upward adjustment in the daily feeding allowance for inmates, raising it from 1 cedi 80 pesos to 5 cedis per prisoner. The Interior Ministry explains the increment is aimed at improving nutrition and easing pressure on the Ghana Prison Service, which has long struggled with inadequate funding for meals.
The 5 cedis is not adequate, but looking at where we are taking it from 1 cedi 80% to 5 cedis would be a good start. Hoping that will build on it.
As more news on 3news.com. Make some time and visit 3news.com. This is Ghana Tonight. We're live on 3FM 92.7, also on TV3 Ghana on Facebook and on YouTube. We're also live on TV3 Ghana on YouTube and on 3 News as well on YouTube. There's so many ways you can connect with us here on Ghana Tonight. And as always, proudly brought to you by Flamingo Paint, Simply Superior, Sasso Insecticide Spray and Qual, Tum Preco. Coming up next here on Ghana Tonight, the ambulance trial, it's over. This last year, the court acquitted and discharged all these accused persons. But the controversy isn't over yet. There are calls for further investigations into the exact actions of the persons involved. And that's growing, at least over the last almost a week now. We unpack the developments in the last 1 week regarding this particular case and the calls on the Criminal Investigations Department of the Ghana Police Service. Here's what we do know right now. And this is coming through earlier in the day. A Ghanaian citizen, Daniel Mafo of Foriata, has petitioned the Director General of the Criminal Investigations Department, that's the CID of the Ghana Police Service, to commence an investigation into allegations against Supreme Court Justice Yoni Kolendi and the Director of Operations at the National Security Secretariat, that's Richard Jakba, for what he says is, quote, an obstruction of justice, unquote, and interference in the ambulance case. Now, his petition comes barely a week after Richard Jakba, mentioned in this one, also petitioned the CID to investigate immediate past Attorney General Godfrey Yeboah-Dame in this same case. Also, we're going to put the two side by side and find out exactly what the specific demands of these two petitions to the CID are. One targeted at investigations, calls for investigation into the actions of Godfrey Yeboah-Dame, and this latest one calls for investigation into the actions of Justice Yoni Kolendi and Richard Jakba. Now, the man to do this has been away for quite a while. He's back with the bank. Dennis Poberi Wadam Esquire. It's good to have you back.
Always a pleasure being here, Alfred.
Leave is certainly not pension.
Precisely so.
Absolutely.
I missed the moment that I was here. But I'm back.
Indeed.
And it's good to watch you from home. It is.
Well, it's short-lived as you have it.
Well, we have to do this together. Alfred, unfortunately, I'm here in the midst of a controversy that never runs out.
Absolutely.
I mean, this is a matter that started somewhere. The previous years, we all thought it was done and dusted when this case was closed in the sense that the accused persons were discharged and acquitted. An appeal that was filed was subsequently abandoned, so we thought there was an end to it. But it appears to be running on multiple legs now. The fallout now having to mount pressure on the CID to also look into some parts of this particular issue. And that's what we're having to deal with. So the men that you see here are the men at the center of this whole issue that we're having to deal with tonight. The first person, Justice of the Supreme Court, His Lordship Justice Yoni Kolendi. The second person is the former Attorney General, the Learned Godfred Yabo Adami. You also have the Director of Special Operations at the National Security Secretariat, Richard Gapa. He's a petitioner in one of the instances. So he was the first person to run to the CID, saying that the CID should look into what he says was a misconduct or a criminal conduct in respect of his engagement with the former Attorney General in respect of that ambulance trial. Then the last person is Daniel Oforiata. He identifies himself as a Ghanaian citizen. He also happens to be the latest petitioner in this particular respect. And
That's
for
right.
him, he wants the CID to look into the conduct of two persons, Richard Japa and then His Lordship Justice Yoni Kolendi, also in respect of the same ambulance matter, because as you would see in some aspects of the petition, he makes references to some encounters that were indeed confirmed in court, that yes, there were some meetings that were held. For him, he's of the view that those meetings were in furtherance of what he says amounts to some crimes that he wants the CID to look into. Let's move straight into some excerpts of that latest petition as was presented to the CID by Mr. Mafu. So let's start with Mr. Mafu's petition. Yes, so we begin from here.
That's right. This is what came through earlier today, right?
Yes.
Good.
So we have just decided to characterize the relevant parts of it because it's a bit lengthy and all that. So parts of it reads that the acts of Justice Kolendi and Richard Japa border on the commission of crimes relating to interference with legal proceedings. So let's put the issues into perspective. So while the trial of Dr. Keslatu Forsen and two others, and the two others here refer to Mr. Nemana and then Richard Bapa. But for some reason, on ill health, Mr. Nemana was taken out. So the trial was literally on Dr. Keslatu Forsen and then Richard Japa. It came to light that there was a meeting in which Japa was involved, together with the Attorney General, then the former Attorney General now, Godfrey Yabo Adami, and then His Lordship Justice Kolendi. That meeting was said to be held in Justice Kolendi's house. Now, what is the reason for the meeting? It is yet unclear, even though different parties have tried to explain it in different ways.
Absolutely.
There are allegations and counter-allegations. While Richard Japa says that meeting was at the behest of the former Attorney General so that he could get a favorable testimony to convict now Minister for Finance, Dr. Keslatu Forsen. This petitioner says that meeting was in essence to get the former Attorney General to clear Richard Japa. So it is one meeting, different narratives. Yes. So that's why he now says that this particular meeting that he talks about and that the conduct of Justice Kolendi and Richard Japa border on the commission of crimes relating to interference with legal proceedings. He doesn't name specifics, but with the aid of law, we will come to understand what it means to say crimes relating to interference with legal proceedings, because we find it in our body of laws. He goes on to say that when Mr. Dami turned down Richard Japa's overtures to meet Justice Yoni Kolendi, in breach of the code regulating his work as a Superior Court judge, lured the then Attorney General into meetings at his, that's Justice Kolendi's, residence on no less than 4 occasions. Justice Kolendi would then secretly invite Richard Japa to come over to his house and interfere in legal proceedings pending against Japa by impressing upon Mr. Dami to stop the prosecution of the former and ensure that the prosecution would let him go free at the submission of no case stage of the trial. He goes on to say that after narrating all that he has said, referring to a CID boss as Madam, that it shows a calculated effort by the learned justice of the Supreme Court, Justice Yoni Kolendi, together with his cousin, Richard Japa, to interfere in the prosecution of the criminal case filed against Richard Japa by the Republic of Ghana. This is not only a dishonorable, but also borders on the commission of crimes in accordance with the Criminal and Other Offences Act 1960, Act 29. This is his own appreciation of the issues. Never mind that.
So this is the claim of the petitioner.
Yes, the
which
petitioner.
He wants.
Who in this case is now a third party. And when I say a third party, he is not a person who was at the said meeting. Because it came to light. Yes, indeed, there was such a meeting. That meeting was Yoni Kolendi,
Richard
Japa,
and then
the former Attorney General, Godfrey Yabo Adami. But he says that from what he has gathered, this was what transpired, and this was the motive for the meeting, for which he wants the CID to look into. Now, let's move a step backwards. Like I indicated, he says that what they did border on commission of crimes relating to interference with legal proceedings. And he refers to Act 29. We have been combing Act 29 to see what exactly it means to say crimes relating to legal proceedings. When you look at Act 29, which is the Criminal Offences Act, there's a part that is labeled interference with legal proceedings. That is a substrata under a gamut of laws which relate to administration of justice or obstruction of it, if you like. But the part that specifically relates to interference with legal proceedings is sections 220 to 225. And this is the nature of the offenses that have been captured in there. Section 220 talks about hindrance of inquests. This is very remote to whatever we're discussing. Inquest has to do with
nothing to do.
Exactly. The next one, which is 221, is neglect to hold inquest. That one too.
It's not related in any way.
Yes. Now there's 222, which talks about violence against judges, etc., in legal proceedings.
Okay.
This falls under the category of offenses interference with legal proceedings.
But in the context of what we are discussing, it doesn't apply.
No.
Okay.
There's disturbance of courts. Section 224 talks about insulting courts. And then 225 talks about exciting prejudice as to proceeding pending in court.
Right.
So it's quite unclear exactly which parts of the interference with legal proceedings is being referred to in this particular petition. But it's also important to know that beyond this, there's a whole gamut of provisions that relate to obstruction of justice. But to put this in context, just because he used the phrase interference with legal proceedings, we just wanted to be clear that, yes, if the CID is looking into it, perhaps this is
the section they would look in
Act
29.
Beginning point to look at it.
Right.
Before maybe considering expanding it to other parts. Because in part of the petition, he talks about obstruction of justice and all that. That is the full complement of the petition as presented by Mr. Mafu in this particular matter.
Right.
But like you did indicate, even before today, Mr. Dwakwa had also gone to the same CID, where he also petitioned the CID on similar grounds, the same set of facts. That yes, during the course of the trial, there was an engagement between myself and the former Attorney General in respect of that particular matter. He believes that that engagement was inappropriate because, in his view, the Attorney General was basically trying to elicit favorable responses for him to get someone convicted. And in some instances, he makes allegations that he was being coached and actually being coached to get fake documents to put before a law court. He thinks that is not appropriate. So this is his petition as well. One, he says that at the close of the prosecution's case, the High Court upheld that the then Attorney General, Godfrey Dami's contention that a case had been made against me to answer. He was just characterizing the background. Two says that Godfrey Dami solicited my cooperation to testify in a manner to incriminate the first accused person and to help fast-track the conclusion of the case. Emphasis. Solicited my cooperation to testify in a manner to incriminate the first accused person and to help fast-track the conclusion of the case.
And the first accused in this instance is Dr. Kasiel Atufosin.
Precisely. This is an allegation made by Richard Jakpa. He goes on to say that the testimony to incriminate Honorable Dr. Atufosin after I opened my defense led to a phone call on me on the 26th day of March 2024 by the learned Attorney General when I was to appear in the High Court to continue my evidence in chief in terms of the witness statement I had filed. In the phone conversation between the then Attorney General and me, which I have attached to this petition, he suggested that during cross-examination, I testified not based on matters personally perceived and understood by me, but based on his suggestion and to skew my understanding of the issues in such a way to implicate the first accused person and to further lie to the court that I was not well by procuring a false excuse duty to that effect. All these are allegations that Mr. Jakpa is making against the former Attorney General. He says these are matters that have happened for which he wants the CID to look into, and that if these matters are looked into and they turn out to be true, some of them constitute crimes for which the state must take interest. He proceeds to say that in that telephone conversation, Godfrey Dami directly engaged me on the subject of the letters of credit as an Attorney General of the Republic of Ghana and stated how he thought I should answer questions regarding the letters of credit during cross-examination, contrary to my honest understanding and knowledge of how letters of credit work. I disagreed with him, but he insisted that it would not bear any risk to me. He further said he would be traveling out of the country and not be able to be in court at the next adjourned date, and that I seek an adjournment from the court by getting an excuse duty from a hospital to the court that I was sick to allow him to be present in court before I proceed with my testimony. But I declined this criminal, dishonest, and unethical suggestion from him as an Attorney General then. In the circumstances, I pray that the attempt by Godfrey Dami for me to testify in a particular way so as to dishonestly, wickedly, and without an iota of conscience implicate Honorable Dr. Atufosin, and also to lie to the court by procuring a false excuse duty, which constitutes a crime. That's fabrication of evidence. That's actually a crime in a Criminal Offences Act. Be investigated and made to face the full consequence. So in his case, at least, he has mentioned a specific crime for which he wants the CID to look at. Fabrication of evidence.
But then also the Oforiatta petition also mentions interference.
Yes.
In the entire process.
But he gives them a direction that look in this side.
In a specific section in Act 29.
Exactly.
Who doesn't specifically, at least at the starting point.
As a starting point.
Give us
by way of
direction.
aiding the CID in its investigation, I am giving you leads that look in this direction. You find something of that sort. But what is instructive is that under paragraph 7 of Mr. Jakpa's petition, he thinks that what happened amounts to fabrication of evidence. Which is an offense, expressly. So he wants the CID to look into this particular matter and then deal with it. But Alfred, what is also important is that it's not just matters with the CID. Because if you recall, somewhere in May, another Ghanaian also petitioned the General Legal Counsel in respect of the former Attorney General. That is because he was not just an Attorney General. I mean, he's a lawyer, a respected one at that. And in the view of that person, that what transpired in this particular matter for which we are seeing Mr. Jakpa and other people raising concerns amount to professional misconduct, which is one which is dealt with by the General Legal Counsel. So that is also pending before the General Legal Counsel. But we're now beginning to see the criminal aspect of this, which is now before the CID. So, in all, these are the persons involved in what we are discussing today, the fallout from the ambulance trial, which ended somewhere last year.
It's a very important reference point. And then Martin Pebo is a private legal practitioner. He's been watching you, then has run through all of this and put the two petitions side by side. And Martin Pebo, thank you for joining us here on Ghana Tonight. First off, we reference the fabrication of evidence that Richard Jakpa is asking that the CID investigates. That act of the alleged fabrication of evidence that he says Godfrey Adame was asking that he should do to testify in a certain way against Dr. Kasiela Toforsin. Plus, this latest one from Mahama Foriata, who has also petitioned the CID to now investigate Justice Yoni Kolendi and Richard Jakpa in this same case regarding the specific meeting that took place at Yoni Kolendi's house, exactly what was discussed and its aftermath. I mean, with all the events flowing, how does all of this strike you?
So, somebody will say, luckless coincidence. Another person too will say, a very well orchestrated attempt to neutralize the Jakpa petition against Godfrey Adame. Yes. So we would never know which one is really the gospel truth, if we may call it so. But in such is life, sometimes you may never know the real story behind the story. So we'll take it like that. But on the face of it, since this second petition is also presented as an attempt to get accountability, then it means that we have to give the petitioner his day in investigations. Yes, instead of his day in court. We don't know whether this will end up in court or not. So we say his day in investigations, right? So let it go. Sometimes, as I said, because the key thing we should be watching is this. Because often citizens don't feel empowered and some citizens are scared, and for so many other reasons, citizens generally don't like to take on persons in authority. I would say we should hasten slowly in condemning the petition. He's a citizen, that's Daniel Oforiatta, right? Let him have his day. Yes, let him have his day. Because if we don't, then it would appear that we embrace Jakpa's petition against Godfrey Adame, but we are blowing hot and cold by summarily dismissing this Daniel Ofori's petition against Jakpa and Justice Kulendi. So for that reason, as I said, let's allow this one to also receive due process.
It's important. Just mentioning the name in full, because Daniel Ofori also sends a definite signal, because that's another matter, another name and another issue. This is Daniel Mahama Foriatta. It says, in what we know is from Brony Chrome in Chebi. And if you look at the details of the petition, as Dennis carefully ran through, it meticulously outlines 4 key pieces of evidence that he says he wants the CID to look into and conduct: intervention at arraignment, facilitating contact, a WhatsApp disparity. Because if you recall, there were some WhatsApp messages that became public during the same trial, and even the recording that was admitted in court as evidence. And then the secret meetings, according to this petitioner, secret meetings at the justices, that's Justice Yoni Kolendi's residence. These are the 4 areas that he wants the CID to concern itself with in this investigation that he has petitioned them to conduct. Now, how do you also react to the views that Janice referenced briefly about the aspect of the law that is asking the CID to look and start with, and then also the view that, look, these matters have been touched on sparingly during this entire court process?
Oh, No, I would say that it's worth investigating because that way we will get closure on that matter. Another fact, I don't even see how the petition can be thrown out. No. Once it's made its way into the public domain, it has to go through the process. And and as part of the process, yes, it's possible to look at it and say, okay, look, maybe it doesn't lie in our domain, etc. I don't want to stampede the investigations. I just, that's not the purpose. So what I'm saying is that once it's come into the public domain, we all expect that it should go through the process so that we will have a logical conclusion to it. It can't be, swept under the carpet. There's nothing that can be done to it other than it being allowed to travel its full length. Yes, so that we would have a final outcome of the investigations. And as I said, it's also within the investigation, just for example, say, look, this is not my mandate, maybe it's somebody's mandate, etc. Those ones, as I said, I'm not suggesting ways of dealing with the petition. No, I'm just saying that it has to go through, and then finally there will be a pronouncement on it from the CID that this is what we've come up to. So then we know where the chips will fall. There is a lot of cynicism. You see that because there's a lot of cynicism, a lot of, because there is dwindling trust in the law enforcement agencies and in the judiciary, people would be like, the cynics would be like, oh, this will not see the light of day. Oh, this will go nowhere. You see, so if we don't get a logical conclusion to it, it will reinforce that notion that for certain powerful persons, if you petition, the petition doesn't get anywhere. No, this petition, eventually the CID will have to tell us the outcome of their investigations. Then we know that, okay, this is what the CID says. Then there's a record of it, rather than it just goes in and then it doesn't come out. Just like you remember the famous Akunta mining case. Had it not been for the fact that NDC eventually came to power, you see that the previous police administration, CID boss, and then the IG, then Dr. Dampare, they were playing lackluster, kukwasa, playing slow with it so that eventually we would give up. We never gave up. And eventually it was a change in government that enabled the investigations to go on. And as we speak now, they say charges will be filed next month. So Akunta Mining will face the court. You say, so, and prior to that, as we kept making noise about it for years, about 3 years prior to, to get to this stage, all along it was reinforcing the point that certain people are like sacred cows. They are beyond reproach. They are beyond investigation. They are beyond prosecution. You see,
Right.
So that perception has festered for long, and not only the Akunta mining case, there are other Akufo-Addo appointees that some of the cases got nowhere. So because of that kind of huge suspicion, mistrust, etc., this one should be allowed to see the light of day.
I see.
Just like the way the Akunta mining case is now seeing the light of day.
All right. But then again, as well, even though the accused persons in this case have been acquitted and discharged, the view that you push forcefully is that there are matters that have not seen closure. And so it will be worth a CID getting into it to bring some closure to the issues that the court did not deal with in this entire saga.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Because the matter of the two petitions was not what the court decided. The court was causing financial loss and other related offenses. The court was not called upon to look at what the petition against Godfrey Dame alleges and then the petition against Jakpa and Justice Kulendi. No. So these matters were not decided by the court at all. So this is a different matter. You know that those matters that the court was looking at, those were investigated, and placed on a charge sheet. You see, when you are starting a criminal trial, you see there's a charge sheet and then there's the facts. Some even also call it the fact sheet to support. So at the time, the matter that was before the criminal court, okay, was something that had been investigated years ago and placed before the court. The contents of these two petitions was not what the court was seized with from the beginning of the case. Those contents only emanate from the time, Jakpa tendered in the tape. Yes. And that was way down the trial when Jakpa brought up those tapes. Yeah, right. And that was when he had to open his defense and all that.
You for this, and it's early days yet in these two petitions. We'll see how the coming days will play out on this, and then also be updating our viewers on it. Martin Peoples, private legal practitioner, thank you for joining us here on Ghana Tonight. And this is Ghana Tonight, and we'll keep an eye on these two petitions and see how it plays out. As I indicated earlier this evening, the president, John Dramani Mahama, returned to Accra after participating in the 80th session of the United Nations General Assembly in New York, where world leaders gathered to deliberate on pressing global challenges. Now, the annual assembly, which opened last week, focused heavily on climate change, sustainable development, global peace, and financing for economic recovery in developing nations. President Mahama used a platform, as we did review last week, to highlight Ghana's priorities, including the fight against illegal mining, the need for climate adaptation funding, and measures to strengthen regional security. His engagements at the United Nations General Assembly also included bilateral meetings with development partners, international financial institutions, and fellow African leaders to discuss strategies for boosting trade and technological cooperation. And with that impactful speech that he made as well when he addressed the world leaders earlier last week, now which got global commendation and applause for him. The president touched down earlier this evening, where he was received by the vice president, Professor Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman, as you see on the screen there, and other senior government officials. President Mahama's return marks the conclusion of a week of high-level diplomacy, with expectations now on his government and how it will translate to the international commitments and partnerships secured in New York into concrete domestic outcomes. So that is what we called earlier this evening. President has arrived from the United Nations General Assembly, 80th session. This is Ghana Tonight. Coming up next, prison feeding grants triple from 1 cedi 80 pesos to 5 cedis. What does this mean for inmate welfare? We get insight from someone on the inside who knows exactly what goes on. Government has announced an upward adjustment in the daily feeding allowance for inmates, raising it from 1 cedi 80 pesos to 5 cedis per prisoner, 5 cedis a day. Now, the Interior Ministry explains the increment is aimed at improving nutrition and easing pressure on the Ghana Prison Service, which has long struggled with inadequate funding for inmates' meals. Take a look.
We know that the 5 cedi is not adequate, but looking at where we are taking it from, 1 cedi 80% to 5 cedi would be a good start. Hoping that will build on it, because like you rightly said, even children who just eat once, we use 2 cedis 50 pesos. Meaning that for adults, even if we are going to use that same rate, it means the minimum should be about 7 cedis, 50 pesos. But we proposed 10 cedis. We were standing at 7 and 8, but you know the budget envelope. They said that they can manage with 5 for now. We are hoping that into 2027, we should be able to even get this even further improved.
Well, so let's give you an idea of how the picture looks like at the prisons. Earlier in the year, you recall that the president approved the amnesty for some 998 prisoners who were given pardon by the president. And from what we do know, 860 of them have actually been released. And that also paints a picture. The first-time offenders in this 998 were actually 787. And then you had persons who were on death row. They have not been released. Their sentences have been reduced to life imprisonment from death row. So that was the impact of the presidential pardon on them. And then those who were commuted to life sentences have also had their sentences reduced to 20 years. And then those who are seriously ill, 33 of them, they have been released. These persons who are seriously ill, we don't know their identities yet. A number of you are putting up some names that we cannot confirm, but also persons who are over 70 years, they have been released as well. That makes up, and the nursing mothers, 2 nursing mothers who also received the presidential pardon, that's who were in prison. Prisoners who were nursing mothers, 2 of them have been released. Now, apart from that, that's not the only picture that we seek to paint here, because if you look at the 5 cities that has been announced today, this is the picture at the prisons now. We're looking at the categories of convict, remand, that's the prisoners on remand, and prisoners who are on trial. And take a look at those who are on remand. And it raises a very troubling concern of what is happening in the prisons right now. Before the presidential pardon granted these prisoners, those 860 that have been released, there was a population of 14,044. Now we're dealing with a population of 13,184, a reduction of just 6.1%. If you look at it based on how this particular amount, this 5 cedis per inmate, this is for breakfast, lunch, supper, and this is on the state. This is the burden that the state is taking up to feed these inmates from 1 cedi 80 pesos to 5 cedis. You multiply that by what I've just told you, over 13,000, gives you a picture of what we're dealing with right now. And then also, we're talking about this total inmates of, as of August 2025, 13,184. So you do the maths, and the daily cost daily is going to be 65,920 based on the figures that we got from available sources. This is publicly verifiable sources based on the numbers that we have of inmates, of prisoners and prisons across the country. It's important to state that the numbers that we've just showed you is not static, because every day people are convicted and some persons may be released as well. So that should be taken into consideration in analyzing those figures I just put out. Ibrahim Opon Kwating is the Executive Director of Crime Check Foundation. He's been doing a lot of work at the various prisons across the country, and he is joining us on Zoom right now. Ibrahim, good evening. Thank you for joining us here on Ghana Tonight. First off, hearing this increase from 1 cedi 80 pesos per prisoner per day to 5 cedis. Good news?
Well, good evening. What would I say? We want to congratulate government, because I think for the past 10 to 15 years, this is the first time we are hearing of such an increase. But the paradox in the increase is that much as we hail government, I think it is woefully inadequate. And you made a statement that it is a burden that government is taking upon itself. I beg to differ, because we shouldn't see the feeding of inmates who constitute the core component of the country's labor force. Not necessarily labor force. We will come into that argument later on. But then we shouldn't relegate their importance to the background.
In fact, the caption is that I indicated that this is the cost that the state is taking up.
Right.
It's not a burden. I think I indicated it's a cost. But then again, you will say that this is the first time in the last 15 years we've seen an increase. 10 to 15 years.
Sure.
We've seen an increase in the feeding fee for inmates.
Right. So much as we should pat government on the shoulder, I think Government could have done better. There should have been broader stakeholder engagement. I don't know what went into the numbers, but some of us in civil society, for us at Crime Check, we feel disappointed. That's why I'm saying it's a bit of a paradox. We tap government on the shoulder, but at the same time, we feel it is unfortunate. It is not about the value of the money, but the purchasing power. And I'm sure the increment should have been situated within the context of economic indicators. Ask yourself, what would 5 cities do for you, for your kid, for yourself? And I was happy you mentioned this is for breakfast, for lunch, and supper. I'm not sure you've tasted prison food before, but for some of us who have had opportunity to be inside, not as a prisoner, but have deliberately tasted the food. At times, no pepper, no salt. And I'm sure you may have heard this narrative. No sugar for the cocoa. So let's look at the indices. 1 cedi, 80 pesos to 5 cedis. I would say that it falls within the undeliverable bracket because 1 cedi, 80 pesos would have done nothing. 5 cedis does nothing. But just as I said, what can we do? And congratulate government because there has not been any increment for so many years. So we at Check Foundation feel disappointed.
Well, if you say that there could have been some further engagement to arrive at some appreciable amount, how much exactly were you hoping would have been announced?
20 cedis in tandem with a minimum wage. Because
20 cedis per head?
Absolutely, because I feel that we should have situated it, let's be realistic, situated it within, the economic context. What would 5 cedi do? Ocansey, let me ask you. If you are given that amount of money. So it puts a lot of burden and pressure on the prison service. They are no magicians. We know that they've been doing a lot to support inmates. But what is a bit funny is that if you look at the prisons, they have large tracts of land. Some of the prisons even have dams. Go to a UTAG prison. They have the men, let me, borrow that political phrase. We have men, prison officers with master's degrees in agriculture and so on and so forth. They have the capacity. They lack combined harvesters. They lack the tools. They lack the equipment. We could look at a UTAG prison, look at the land there. It could produce vegetables for consumption and even for export. Look at Nsawam, it's the same. I could go on and on and on. So what is preventing governments, successive governments, from implementing interventions, agricultural interventions that could inure the benefit, not going exclusively to even prisoners, but could contribute to economic development? I think perhaps because of the perception we have about prisoners that these are carceral individuals who should be relegated to the background, that perception may have crept into the thinking and possibly influences what should go to support prisoners. That is what I honestly feel. And that is how come we are where we are. Just look at the number of prisons we have. Most of them are relics of colonial administrations. There haven't been much expansion in prison infrastructure. So, but you have politicians who go to prison and they can tell you, can ask some of the conditions there. And let's also not forget, not everyone even may have committed a crime. And others even, draw some references that look at school feeding. How do you expect us? It's even less than 5 cedis. How do you expect us to accord prisoners the same kind of support? I think it is unfortunate.
Right.
It is highly unfortunate. And then it's high time we dispel some of these unfortunate misconceptions about prisoners and then implement policies that would ensure that they become productive.
Right.
They contribute meaningfully to national development. That is what we should be looking at.
Okay. And the path that you take is progressive. You're raising concern and also making recommendations. So we'll see how the path will be on this one. But thank you, Mr. Kwarteng, for joining us here on Ghana Tonight. Ibrahim Opon Kwarteng is the Executive Director of the Crime Check Foundation, giving us an insight into what happens at the prisons. This is Ghana Tonight. We're back shortly after this quick break. Stay with us. Welcome back. This is Ghana Tonight, and coming up next, Boakye Jacko joins the NPP chairmanship race. Now, what does his entry really mean for the party's internal dynamics ahead of that's next year's primaries? And that's coming up next here on Ghana Tonight. And with the many names that have come up, he is one who has officially now put out a statement to declare his intentions. He declined contesting the flag bearership of the party. If you recall, he issued a statement detailing a number of issues and reasons why he says this time around, look, I'm not going to waste my time and my money getting into it. And so he did not go into the presidential or the flag bearership race. He's eyeing the chairmanship. Remember, the NPP, as a political party, have not had the chairman of the party, as it were, at post actively working because he is indisposed, and that's public knowledge. A statement that was issued not too long ago, and so they've had an acting chairman for quite a while now. Now they're going into this crucial 2028 elections, and these are the persons, some of whom have officially indicated their intentions to contest the flag bearership of Boakye Jacko being the first, a former energy minister, and you have Bernard Boakye, the Ashanti regional chair of the NPP. There are talks of him eyeing the national chairmanship of the party. John Boedu, the former secretary, general secretary of the party, former SIGA boss, he has also been mentioned as eyeing the national chairmanship of the New Patriotic Party. Stephen Asamoah Boateng as well, the former chief, that's the minister in charge of chieftaincy and religious affairs, also has been mentioned as eyeing that particular post of the national chairmanship of the NPP. And Edward Boateng has been not publicly known for the party politics. That's the very clear public orientation to the NPP politics, but he's one that has been also mentioned by some persons within the party as eyeing the national chairmanship of the New Patriotic Party to bring a new face to it. Kwesi Amoakwata, not much has been heard of him since the NPP lost elections in December 2024, a former minister for roads and highways as well. Some persons mentioning him as one to watch if eventually declares his intentions to contest the flag, that's the national chairmanship position for the New Patriotic Party. Then a few other persons who have also been mentioned as eyeing that general secretary position. That's that former position of this man, John Boedu. We'll put all of that together to give you a full picture of not just what's happening at the flag bearership level, but at the party leadership level as well. There's a lot that's happening in that regard going into first of January 31, the flag bearership elections, and then the aftermath for the party's leadership going into 2028. On behalf of the rest of the team, thank you so much for joining us here on Ghana Tonight. We're back again tomorrow for another conversation. My name is Alfred Ocansey. Have a good night.
Ghana Tonight is brought to you by Flamingo.